Usually when we have 14 games for MLB DFS, there's going to be at least one pitcher who stands out as being like the must-have stud for that night. Like there haven't been a lot of 14-game slates the past couple of years where we haven't had Jacob deGrom, Garrett Cole, someone like that who we know we want to build around for that night. For Friday's slates, I kind of don't know if that guy exists. Like there are a lot of good pitchers. There are a lot of guys I could see being the top pitcher for tonight. The problem is that it's a lot of guys. There's not like one who I'm like, yes, I absolutely must use this guy. He is my favorite because we got some good options. So today we have to dig in, try to decipher who could emerge from the pack and be the top scorer for DFS. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. It's a little bit extra salary flexibility compared to what we're used to for these Friday slates. Let's dive on in and get you set for tonight. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. There are a couple weather notes here for today. And it is rain, so apologies in advance. There is a good chance of rain in Baltimore for the Red Sox and the Orioles. It looks like the rain picks up right around first pitch and is pretty intense. So I would not get too committed to anybody in that game. I've omitted them from the pitchers and the stacks because I'm skeptical that game goes. There's also a chance of rain in the forecast for Cleveland and Cincinnati. That is more on the light side of things, but still decently constant. It's less of a worry than the Baltimore game, though it's still worth noting for sure. Similar story in Detroit, where light rain is possible. You'll have to monitor it, but that one likely skews towards plains. I feel pretty good about the Detroit and the Cleveland game, less so about the Boston versus Baltimore game in Baltimore for today. So some weather notes for sure. And honestly, with the way the pitchers are stacking up right now, there's a decent chance that I change my mind on how to view things by this afternoon. So make sure you tune in at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages for our daily Q&A. Swing on by there, ask me questions about tonight's slate, and get set for this one. Baseball back on the menu for today. Yesterday we had Tom Vecchio on to talk NBA DFS. Tom, of course, always has you covered with the Daily ISO here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Tom also has the Daily Deke. We have UFC via Austin Swaim for this weekend. I'll have NASCAR later today, YouTube 10:30, and then on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get all of your DFS needs covered daily here via the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Also, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Speaking of basketball, what's up, basketball fans? FanDuel has partnered with the NBA to provide fans with an exclusive opportunity to win a trip to this year's NBA playoffs. All you have to do is enter the free qualifying contest on FanDuel from now through May 16th for a chance to win. FanDuel will add together your three highest scoring lineups to get your combined score. The top 50 players at the end of the contest will win big bonus prizes on top of qualifying contest payouts, including a trip for two to the NBA playoffs, autographed gear from Fanatics, and NBA.com gift cards. Head over to FanDuel.com. Check out the banner there for the NBA Road to the Playoffs for more information. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate, Carlos Rodon is the highest salary pitcher. He is 11-2. Tough matchup, though, with the Royals' low strikeout team. That's why I don't think there is a definitive top option for today. Trevor Rogers is 10-4. He's great. Pitch count concerns, though. There. Jack Flaherty is 10-2. Not the highest strikeout guy so far this year, but a matchup at the Rockies. Julio Urias is $10,000, also a low strikeout matchup. Blake Snell is $9,000, low strikeout matchup with a lot of right-handed batters. Eduardo Rodriguez, Zach Eflin, Zach Gallen, and Sean Manaea are the others at $8,000 and higher. So I can poke holes in literally everybody on this option, on this slate. So there's a lot of messiness at the top of the slate, and I think that what that's going to lead to is being pretty dispersed roster rates. I don't think anyone will emerge as being the most popular. I think the guy I'm going to wind up landing on for my top option is the guy who checks every box. He's a high strikeout guy, decently high strikeout guy, at home in a high strikeout matchup. And the person who best fits that mold to me is Jack Flaherty. He will be my top option for today at $10,200. Flaherty's facing the Rockies at home. The Rockies, always a massively, massively plus matchup, especially for righties. They have just an 82 WRC plus versus righties since the start of last year. That is the worst mark on the slate. They have a 26% strikeout rate with an 8% walk rate. So basically, this is just a pristine situation from a pitching perspective. Flaherty, I have some reservations, but he's good enough to take advantage of that. He's doing exactly what we want. He's lowering his sinker usage this year, using more four-seam fastballs instead. That's exactly what you want to see from a DFS perspective. Get rid of the sinkers. They're bad for strikeouts. Unfortunately, it hasn't led to a ton of strikeouts yet for Flaherty. He has a 26% strikeout rate through his first 6 starts, but he also hasn't had many good matchups to bolster that number. Half of his starts so far this year have come against teams ranked inside the top 7 in strikeout rate against righties. He's also made 4 starts on the road. This will be just his 3rd start at home. So the lack of pop games and overall good ratios for Flaherty is understandable. He did have a plus matchup last week against Pittsburgh, 9 strikeouts in 6 innings there, and that is a low strikeout team. They're bad, but they're a low strikeout team. The velocity for that start and the start before that was really good for Flaherty, up from where it was his first 4 starts. So if we go just based on the 2021 numbers, it's not going to pop that much, but I think there is enough room for improvement here for Flaherty via the velocity increase, via the matchup, via some of the matchups he's had previously. That's especially true in this matchup. So I am comfortable making Flaherty my top pitcher of the night. I think that there's a chance he emerges as being the no-brainer top option. If that happens, I'm okay deviating. One other guy who could get a lot of popularity, which makes me a little bit nervous, is Trevor Rogers. He is my number 2 pitcher for tonight. It's not a situation I feel great about. And the reason that I'm nervous has nothing to do with talent. He's tremendous, great matchup at home. The reason I hesitate to go all in here is pitch count. The pitch count has been inconsistent and generally kind of low for Rogers. He has gone fewer than 80 pitches twice this year, which does include his most recent start. He has exceeded 90 pitches just once. His max is 95, and that's a little bit concerning. Unfortunately, this makes a lot of sense because if you follow Craig Mish of SportsGrid on Twitter, he said that it sounds like Rogers is on innings limit of 150 innings. So they're trying not to blow all those innings right now. And what that does is it lowers his ceiling. He's probably not going to go like 60 pitches. So the floor is still good, but I worry about the ceiling. Is he going to hang a 60 burger on us tonight? I don't know. That's tough for me to answer given that I don't know what his pitch count will be. But Rogers is still tempting despite that. Even with the low pitch counts, he has still finished 6 innings in half his starts. He has 7+ strikeouts in 4 out of 6 starts. So the low pitch count is a concern, and I will downgrade him as a result. But it's not enough to push him out of play. He has a 34% strikeout rate this year. The Brewers have a 26% strikeout rate against lefties since the start of last year. It's a good park for pitching in general, less so on this slate given the cold temperatures out east, and it's going to be warmer there. So it's not a lot of hard contact against Rogers. I think that the way I'm viewing this here is if you gave me Rogers on a full pitch count in this scenario, I'd pay $12,000 for him. If you give him to me at a reduced pitch count, I think 10-4 is very fair, and I think that 10-4 is enough where I would put him second on my list. But because of the pitch count concerns, he needs to be second for me behind Flaherty. So, again, I think Flaherty's 1, Rogers is 2. I have decently big concerns around both, but I think that they will be the guys I focus on most here today. If Rodon is going to fly super under the radar because of the salary, because of the matchup, I think that there is some appeal for him in tournaments, but I do think that Flaherty and Rogers grade out as being 1-2, but there's a lot of room for wiggling here. So again, tune back in at 4 p.m. to see if I change my mind there. Feel pretty good about ranking them where I'm at, but there is not a ton of certainty at the top of the pool for me. As far as the value plays go, I actually like a couple of options here. The messiness and the muddiness is not just in the studs, it's also in the value plays. If Eduardo Rodriguez's game plays, he's pretty fun against the Orioles. Sean Manaea, high strikeout matchup with the Rays. I like that. David Peterson's kind of fun. Jameson Taillon is interesting. They're facing low strikeout teams, and that does downgrade them. Taillon's pitch count pretty low too. But my favorite option here is going to be Charlie Morton against the Phillies. I know all those guys listed are basically youngsters, but Morton, not quite that. He's at home against the Phillies, and revenge game, a short-term revenge game, I guess, for Morton. But hey, a revenge game's a revenge game. Not the best matchup. The Phillies have a 102 WRC plus against righties with a 24% strikeout rate. They're about neutral in both departments. but neutral is good enough for Morton. He's come back strong this year. He has a 3.56 skill interactive ERA with a 28% strikeout rate. His ERA is 5.08, and it seems like a lot of that is due to cluster luck. He let up 4 runs each of his past 2 starts, but part of that was a grand slam by Chris Bryant, bad sequencing there. In the second start, he had let up 2 runs in the first 5 innings, then let up 2 more in the 6th, one of which scored after he left the game. His expected ERA is 3.41. That means that Morton should get better as the year goes along. He's at home. He gets some strikeouts. Atlanta, not as hot as usual for today. Temperatures in the 60s, so it might wind up being okay that he's at home. Overall, I think that Morton is really solid. His salary is $7,900. There is some risk if he keeps on walking guys, but given the trade-off upside we get and the low salary, I think that Morton is still worth it. The floor here is not great because he is issuing some walks. The Phillies are pretty good, and he's had those blow-up outings, but I think that a good game is well within his range of outcomes. So among the value plays, I do like Morton most. We'll talk about another value play in things to watch as well in case you are scared off by the ERA with Charlie Morton. Let's move to stacks now. First, though, I have been on the Twins each of the past couple of days and hasn't necessarily worked out great. Now Byron Buxton is banged up again. I would skew towards expecting him to sit today. Even if we assume Buxton does not play, I still think we should go at the Twins against Tarik Skubal. Skubal making his second starts, coming back to the rotation. He did make some alterations in his first start back. He went with more fastballs, fewer sliders in that start, and that did not fix his issues and honestly may have made them worse. He let up 3 home runs in 3 innings in that game. He had 2 walks compared to 1 strikeout, and that's a continuation of what's been happening with Skubal all year long. He now has allowed 71 balls in play across his 6 outings. The stabilization point where you expect these stats to get pretty predictive is usually in the 60s or 80s as far as all batted ball data goes. So we're close to that number for Skubal right now, and his barrel percentage against is 19.7%. League average is about 8.5%. That's disgusting. It was 10.7% last year, which was also above average. League average was about 7.5% last year, so well above average both years, and disgustingly above average, more than twice the league average this year. So even when that barrel rate does come down, which it should, he's still a guy who profiles to allow a lot of hard contact. Last year, he was able to kind of overcome that because he got strikeouts. It kept things from completely imploding, but that's not happening this year. His strikeout rate is 17%. He has a 9.8% swinging strike rate. So if he wants to, stick, he needs to improve both his strikeout rate and his batted ball data. But if he's going to be not like a no-brainer stack against guy, he has to improve at least one. I don't know if that's going to happen right now. And if not, I think we continue stacking against him, starting with the Twins for tonight. If Buxton is out, it is a big bummer because he's been tremendous. He downgrades the entire offense if he's not in there. But we still got Nelson Cruz there. They're not totally devoid of talent. I'm still on board with Cruz, Josh Donaldson, Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, Kyle Garlick. All those guys are very much in play. And Cruz, easy to get to for tonight, given the pitcher's salaries. So it's similar to the Rogers situation where we downgrade them due to their flaws, but we don't entirely cross them off with Buxton being out. So still like the Twins today, despite the assumption that Byron Buxton does not play. Speaking of injuries, let's talk about the Chicago White Sox. No more pertinent team there. They are down a bunch of massively high-impact bats, and that's a concern. But even when we look at just this year, when there's been no Eloy Jimenez the entire time, they still have a 108 WRC plus against righties, and I think there are enough good pieces left here that we can still stack them against Brad Keller. Keller is doing the exact opposite of what we preach here on the solo shot, where he is upping his sinker usage and taking away sliders. That's not what you want. When he's doing that, you would expect his strikeout rate to come down, but for his batted ball data to get better. Part of that is true. The strikeout rate is down, but the batted ball data has somehow gotten worse. In his 6 starts, Keller has a 5.39 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 14%. He has a 45% ground ball rate. That is down from 53% last year. He's let up a barrel 11.5% of the time on balls in play against him. So he's making these changes to try to make his batted ball data better, but it seems like it's kind of backfiring. That could mean that Keller will go back to what he did previously. that would lead to more ground balls, and that's annoying. But we could still stack against him because last year his expected ERA was 4.42. It was 4.89 the year before that. So even if he does go back to the sliders, this is still a good spot to me with the White Sox for today. I'll stack the White Sox here and see what happens against Keller and see if he does make those changes. Even with the talent drain, there are still guys to like here with the White Sox. It helps a lot that Juan Moncada seems to finally be getting his groove back. I think that one way to look at this is guys who've had some rough stretches is you lop off the first 2 weeks of the season, let them get in a groove, let them get into regular playing time against major league competition and see what they do from that time forward. We see what adjustments they've made. If we do that with Moncada, he has a 24% strikeout rate in that time. His barrel rate is 9.8%. His improvements, I think, are pretty legit. And what that means, we have another stud to target here with the White Sox. He's not going to run, I don't think, based on what he's been doing so far. So don't count on that. Not a guy with two sources of upside anymore, but still another stud to use here. So the White Sox, to me, number 2 behind the Twins in a team I'm very willing to stack. For the third stack, I want to take advantage of the good weather in Texas because it's very cold out east, and obviously a lot of the West Coast spots have cold temperatures in general. But both the Astros and the Rangers games have higher temperatures than most of the rest of the slate. That means better things for offenses, even though those parks in general aren't great. But I think that for tonight, they are pretty good for offense. And of the teams in that group, the one I'm most willing to stack here is the Astros. They're facing Ross Stripling. He used to be a really fun option as a pitcher, but he just hasn't been able to keep it together. The past 2 years, a 5.84 ERA last year with a 4.96 skill interactive ERA. And if you look at his first 3 starts this year, the strikeout rate is back up. It's 23%. I don't think that sticks, though, because his CSW percentage, which is called strikes plus strikes swinging, it's 24%. League average is about 28.5%. So below average there, and it's actually a worse mark than what he had last year. He's letting up an 11.9% barrel rate with just a 34% ground ball rate. So in order for Stripling to have success and get back to where he was back in 2019 and before that, he needs the strikeout to stick. I am doubting that happens right now. He has had some tough matchups in there, but I view the Astros as being a tough matchup as well this year. They have a 111 WRC plus against righties with a 179 ISO. That is in just 2021. So keep that in mind. So it's a smaller sample, but still, I like what I've seen so far. I think the Astros will give Stripling some trouble here, and we have the salary to get to the stud state. The Astros aren't super expensive to begin with, but that puts the Astros third on my list for today. One thing I like quite a bit about the Astros is actually kind of a middle to bottom of the order stack because I like all of Carlos Correa, Yuli Gurriel, and Kyle Tucker. Tucker hitting 7th now, which could, in theory, lower his DFS appeal, but the upside is tremendous. You got a 237 ISO against righties, couple of stolen bases. His salary is $2,600. I want to buy low on Tucker, even with the lower spot in the order. You compare him very well with Correa in 6th at $2,900. Yuli Gurriel, pretty much a value play too. So I think a 5, 6, 7 stack with whether you want to go Bregman, probably not super into Altuve, but like if you want to go with, Yordan Alvarez, because we'll have the salary to get to him. So I would say pick your favorite stud at the top and then go 5, 6, 7. That makes the Astros very easy to stack with Jack Flaherty, and you can kind of splurge with your second stack too. So the Astros, really fun for today. Might wind up talking myself into putting them second above the White Sox. They could honestly be first, too. I think all 3 of these are pretty evenly matched. So the Astros, a really fun option for today. Let's finish up here with things to watch. Of the other potential values mentioned earlier, my favorite one is Sean Manaea. He has the most reliable pitch count of that group. He has the best matchup, too. He's topped 100 pitches twice. He has 95-plus 2 other times. The Rays have a 28% strikeout rate against lefties. If we look at Manaea in his past 5 starts, he has a 3.49 skill interactive ERA with a 25% strikeout rate. I think that if we're looking at the value plays for today, Morton and Manaea are neck and neck. I could see myself flipping to Manaea as being the preferred option. Honestly, I might. So I think Manaea is a really good option, someone I want to turn to for today. I'm likely going to wind up with relatively even exposure across the map. I think that Flaherty and Rogers will be 1 and 2 for me, but the rest of the guys I'm willing to look at for sure. But Manaea and Morton worthy of exposure. I think Rodon worth a look despite the low strikeout matchup and the high salary. I can make that work for today. So pitcher less firm for me than it usually is. I'm pretty tempted by the Yankees against Patrick Corbin today for stacking. Corbin did burn me when I stacked against him 3 starts ago. He held the Cardinals scoreless for 6 innings. And part of the reason he did well in that start is because he started using his slider again, which he had not been doing his first 2 starts. And he's kept up the slider usage in his past 2 starts as well. But even if we look at just those 3 starts where his slider usage is up, he has a 4.93 skill interactive ERA with a 17% strikeout rate. The Yankees, totally capable of jumping all over that. They do have the highest implied total on the slate, so you're not going to sneak up on anybody by using the Yankees, but I think that's justified, honestly. So I think the Yankees still a fine play today, despite the fact I am pretty sure they will be popular. Finally, I do want to mention the Red Sox are in play if we do get the all clear on their weather. They're facing Matt Harvey, who's had good results of late. He's had good batted ball suppression for the entire year. Not a big strikeout rate, though, which means he needs to keep the batted balls in check and keep doing what he's been doing there. This is Boston's 3rd time seeing him this year. They know what he's doing. So I'm good stacking the Red Sox here. If we get the all clear, I would just keep expectations in check because it's not ideal hitting weather. And again, we do have to worry that game will play for today. That is all that we have for right now. As mentioned, we're back in at 10:30 for the NASCAR podcast. That's over on YouTube, and then on the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed after that. Also back at 4 p.m. to talk about this MLB DFS slate. I do want to dig in a bit more to try to see if things change, but especially with the Manaea versus Morton discussion, and then where I slot in the Astros relative to the Twins and the White Sox. So a couple things may change later on. You can ask me about other stuff that was not discussed on the podcast later today. But also just make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook, but also on the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video side of this broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you tonight. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again on Monday. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.